not exactly hidden. Bryn-Char, a few moments if you will, Vernon says, and the previously humming sorcerer nods and follows him a few steps to the side. Have you found something? I believe so, but I've also been using a touch of Axiom to enhance my memory and improve my mental focus. I cannot help but recall that when we first met you claimed to have run away from home at 6 due to life lacking focus and finding the woods before the woods found you, Vernon says, asking without really asking. I skipped the more morbid and cruel details. What should have been running away as a child getting huffy with their parents, Wood, turned into a nightmare when Zolchar and myself were a respectable distance from home, roughly at the point we were about to turn back. Had the Orega girls waited even a minute longer, they would have had the room they needed to catch me before I reached the forest. Ah, I see. I apologize for reminding you, Vernon says, remembering a few times he had threatened to run away from home, mostly because his father had thought it hilarious and had brought it up before he left Earth, stating that this time he couldn't make it back in time for dinner. It's all right. It's good you're paying such attention. Now, you said you found something? There are many of the smaller groups, the ones we thought weren't that important, heading to individual safe houses, but many, not all but many of the ones we suspected to be higher ranking have all teleported. These teleportations scrambled things for a bit, but it's all coming from the ocean, from the area where your son has been saying the underwater base is. And it's not easy to get down there. Clever. Wait, how old is the base? My first attack gave me a trail that led straight to the coast. And that's where they escaped you, I'm presuming. I don't know for certain yet, but your attack being stopped at the port likely encouraged the Orega girls in their use of an underwater safe house and storage facility. Do you think that some of the originals may be alive? Bryn-Char asks, as several faces crossed his mind. Possibly, but don't depend on it. They're criminals. They're aggressive and have a disregard for the normal ways of doing things, which is usually safer. Their own hubris or incompetence could very well have killed them already if random chance or violence hasn't already done so. Although if you want to feel better, you can imagine that they choose death instead of possibly facing you at some time in the future. As fun an idea as that is, I don't think that's the case with things, he says before thinking, and then smiles widely. Although that is a very pleasant idea. How are the children? Vernon asks for a change of topic. You and Morg-Ocken took it on yourselves to bring them home. Did things go well? Oh, very well. Lots of dramatic tears and some wailing. They had all been reported as lost or missing and not kidnapped, though. It makes me wonder how many missing children are actually stolen and not the victims of some misfortune. Bryn-Char asks as he contemplates things. Probably far more than we'll ever be comfortable with. They start early and bold. They tried to get you at 6, and you spent, 6 years in the dark forest before anyone heard from you again. 9. I was 15 when I left, 2 years too late to save my brother's life. Ironic, really. Had I spent less time mourning his death, I might have prevented it, Bryn-Char says, as his eyes start lighting up and the tiny vines poking out from under his clothing start to writhe and lash around. Vernon swats him in the forehead. None of that. We all make mistakes. We all screw up. The only question is, are you going to repeat that mistake? Never. Bryn-Char nearly snarls at him. Then that's that, Vernon says before stepping away and then tilting his head. Come on. We've been having the princesses go to speak with the local landed ladies to encourage them to find the safe houses of the pettier parts of the organization and engage in some good old-fashioned character assassination and slander. By the time this is done, the vast majority should be social and political pariahs. They deserve worse. They're the breading on the meat, the garnish there to distract us from the main course. Come on, I've got something to show you. Vernon then leads Bryn-Char to a small, dark hut that smells foul. The mushrooms in here are connected to the spores I got on the girls. I got lucky and at least half of them lead to that underwater base now. You can hear it from any part of the forest, but they came from these shrooms, so the whispers are loudest here. You're listening in on them. Bryn Char notes as he holds up a small tongue of bright yellow fire in his hand to better see by. The table where the mushrooms are being grown is the source of the foul stench, but the mushrooms have many medicinal uses, including the use of causing whoever you gave that dose to needing medicine. Vernon reaches out and taps one of the mushrooms, causing it to glow. Bryn Char leans in as soft noises come from it. You don't get it, you idiot. This isn't a random attack. We lost contact with several groups before this happened. This was planned. Someone is coming for us. Bryn Char outright twitches. He knows that voice. But Morgakun? Wasn't his big issue about loan sharks in the capital squeezing his family dry? The second voice is unfamiliar, but is one he's putting down as needing to be dealt with. Doesn't matter. Last time we were so sloppy that we spooked someone into being a sorcerer, there was a fucking trench carved into the planet as they chased us down. Don't look at me. I wasn't even in the family business when this would have happened. Sorcerers take years to grow and develop. Regardless, when this blows over, we need to make sure that the grunts understand to hit the kids with a damn sleeping effect before moving in. The first voice grumbles and the glow fades. A recording? Bryn Char asks. It happened about 20 minutes ago. Most of them are just playing the audio from news feeds or music. A couple have muttered swearing and the sound of footsteps, and I think I'm picking up some light snoring from a few more. Vernon explains and Bryn Char nods. That first voice. I know her. She was either there or studied her history enough to understand the level of threat aimed at her head. Vernon confirms. I've overheard a few other things, but as conversations go, that was the really juicy bit. Is it possible that the ones that I missed so long ago are still alive? Bryn Char asks, and Vernon nods. After I was brought out of my rage, I mostly stayed with my wives and occasionally visited family. I got my education mostly due to sheer boredom and a desire to do something that wouldn't piss everyone off. Bryn Char considers and Vernon nods. From what I understand, it's considered a measure of trust between the Empress and her subjects that the location of her princesses is public knowledge. If you were sticking with them, then it would have made you very easy to track from afar and therefore very, very easy to avoid. I was effectively under house arrest for the first century. I went nowhere without at least 3 of them, and they did their best to keep me distracted. Speaking of, where are they? They're not among any of the princesses assisting in this operation. Well, I may have helped them train over the years. They are to the last, part of the Empress's personal guard. From what I recall, it was my Ari that knocked Morgarkan off balance before the Empress slugged him so hard he woke up a week later. Vernon snorts at that little revelation as he mentally sighs with relief. There was a fair amount of affection when he said Ari, so although old wounds were opening, he wasn't directing the pain and frustration at the people in his life currently. It was still somewhat strange to him that husbands could be won in battle, but from every angle he saw things the girls were happy to have someone of value, and they quickly did all in their power to make sure the men were happy to be had. It was a strange way of things, but it seemed to work. Not that he would ever have to worry about it beyond worrying for his friends. He and his Miro Noir wouldn't let it happen. Whatever conversation would have emerged next is interrupted by a cheer from the middle of the village, and Bryn Char raises an eyebrow to hear his son whoop for joy. So he's made progress? Vernon asks. In what? Bryn Char asks, somewhat alarmed that Dare Char had been up to something he was unaware of. The boy may be in his teens and at a better place than Bryn Char had been in his own youth, but he's still worried. He's been dabbling in a dozen different directions, so it could be anyone, to be honest, Vernon says as they head out of the mushroom hut and deeper into the village. Near the pools they dug out and had been maintaining a small fish farm. It was a good way to get the younger sorcerers to respect the nature in the water, as well as provide more meat to be eaten. Also, learning how water flowed into and around it taught quite a bit as well. Derchar is standing on a gigantic swarm of wriggling fish that moves with him as he walks across the pond. Not on the water, but on the fish. He's taken control of them. Interesting, Vernon notes as he considers as Brynchar takes a few more steps and openly considers. Hey, Dad, I think I might be able to scale this up. Who wants to ride a Leviathan? Derchar announces with a whoop. Several of the princesses join in and the sorcerers look curious. How did you do this? Brandon asks, and Derchar jumps off the teeming mass of fish and they scatter before he even lands. It's clear that he's given up control over them and they're spooked by the strangeness of what happened. It's all about the food. I was able to pour power into the plants growing in the water that they feast on, and I managed to get a few to move before I pushed more in. If we can imbue some local fish to the degree we can control them and then get a Leviathan to eat them, we should be able to control the Leviathan, Derchar explains, and Brynchar considers. All right, you've done an amazing job, son. Now, I want you to... Let me get back to that when I come to terms between wanting to protect you a great deal and the fact that I was doing far, far worse and came out all right. Trials of parenthood. Dale taunts him. I've been through this with my daughters, it shouldn't be so hard with my son. Brynchar notes, and there's some good-natured chuckling. Can we go visit them when we're done with this? Derchar asks, and Brynchar smiles. That sounds wonderful. What do your wives think of my mother? Derchar asks, and Brynchar thinks. They think that she got very, very lucky, and it's very, very unfair that she got so lucky. But they're also mature enough to not do anything more than be snippy, Brynchar remarks before grinning, especially since she's willing to share some information. Oh no, sweet tides, they want the baby pictures. Yeah, they already have some. I was keeping it quiet before, but your mother and my wives have been talking and are getting along fairly well, Brynchar says, and Derchar suddenly goes still with his eyes wide. Well, that's a good thing, isn't it? Brandon asks. No, it's not. Mom's too huggy as is. An army of princesses on top of that is too much. How about we focus on taming a gigantic monster of the deeps and then using it to sneak up on the underwater evil lair full of kidnappers and drug pushers so we can unleash your ancient serial killer father to express the fullness of his displeasure and Jesus tap dancing Christ. This is actually happening and I'm a part of it. Oh dear God, Dale says out loud before walking away with a stunned look on his face. Well, you heard the man. Let's do the ridiculous thing to go to the ridiculous place full of ridiculous people and send in our most ridiculous person to do ridiculous things, Vernon says, barely able to keep himself from laughing. Brynchar only rolls his eyes. He's got his target, he's got his location, and it looks like his son is about to provide transport. He can almost smell the blood.